Time passes, the song rises, this anthem of the long-forgotten people plays. And the demons, no, the Drevlians, begin clambering up and out from the darkness. Adam Smith watches in abject horror as the hordes are sent crawling up the mountainside and towards the outpost. I call out the arrival of the enemy to my comrades. And the first beam is fired, as with every night previous. The battle begins to rage. Bones are sent bursting with clouds of smoke and fire as the beams are cast in all directions, tearing through the shadows like blades through skin. Snow falls, the mists gather, my muscles ripple and burn with the strain as electricity crackles with the frost in the icy air. I task Adam Smith with reading aloud from the Bible. As with myself, he falters initially, but he gets the hang of it pretty damn quick. He bellows like a preacher out and into the wind, and his voice is carried out into the night. To the Drevlians, his words must come as a painful, torturous echo of the night they were lost. My heart goes out to them. It really does. But if Alina tells the truth, if these people become monsters the minute they return to their bodies, then is what I'm doing right now the greater good? Or am I just trying to justify this madness to myself? I am no longer certain that what I am doing is right. I hammer the weapon down with a mechanical thud and I send a screaming beam down directly below, tearing through a Drevlian with its hand outstretched towards me. Its charred and blackened bones are sent flying in all directions. Movement in the night to my left bids me turn my head, and amidst the mist and fog of the night, I see him again, that enormous man made of shadow between the peaks, the spirit of the Drevlian personified. And with his arrival, the hordes of the enemy are renewed. Thick and fast, they approach, hungry for their prize down in the cavern beneath the outpost. I stare at the great shadowy spirit, willing him to turn and face me, and with a slow, measured turn of his head, he does so. His eyes of silver lock with mine, and I hear his voice in my head. You know, don't you, Adam? I see it now in your head. You have learned the truth. You know our story, and still you fight. Why? Do you think we don't feel pain when you burn our people to ash upon the mountainside? Rule 2. I remember, do not engage verbally with the enemy, and as planned, I ignore this rule. I respond, and I ask my question. It's true, isn't it? I whisper. And at once a great surge of demons adjust their course and clamber directly towards me. It makes no matter. I drop a device that you reconstructed for me, a bomb of sorts that sends sparks of light spiraling in all directions as it disappears down into the darkness below. You are what's left of the Drevlian, and if you reach what you're so desperate for, then you'll only bring havoc and chaos and further pain into the world. I grit my teeth and bring the beam round in an arc. Adam Smith is forced to shield his eyes as the rock below is burnt temporarily white with the glare. I'm sorry, I really am, but I've had no time to think. I don't know what the best course of action is in the long term, but for now, I can't stand back and allow you entry into this outpost. I cannot allow you to return. Please, forgive me. The guilt comes in ebbs and flows. It is cold, but not as cold as the bitterness of the night. I clench my jaw and resume my battle, shouting out a verse of my own as the weaponized light intensifies. These are the people that used my brother's voice against me, the voice of long-dead brother. These are the people that possessed Christian and brought about his death. You are just like her, whispers the spirit. I thought you were different. Perhaps we were wrong. We want an end to this. Just let us be free. Your bodies remain below this outpost. I mutter back. They must be there for a reason. There must be a reason that they haven't been destroyed. Maybe that knowledge has been lost. Or maybe it's just something else that Alina refuses to tell us. But there is nothing I can do now but my duty. I am a soldier, and these are my orders. I am sorry, Drevlian. We will not forgive you for this, Adam, and we will not forget. If all you want is peace, I ask, then why hide the truth from me? From all of us? Why possess Christian and make him a threat? We cannot reveal the truth until someone asks for it, replies the voice. Christian asked. I do not know why, but in reply I showed him the vision of Olga of Kiev. Unlike you, he saw her face. He saw the hatred there, the hatred for my people, and Christian's heart was filled with nothing but sorrow and compassion. In this moment he was weak, and I possessed him. I took no pleasure in this, but I did what I had to for my people. Why? I shout out into the night. Adam Smith turns to me in shock, but he keeps reading aloud from his book. He cannot hear the voice. Why would you do that? I turn from the Drevlian horde below and look again at the great shadow with its silvery eyes. It slowly looks down at one of its hands, with a sound like the distant rumbling of thunder, because his hands dig faster than ours. Comes the reply, and I see in my mind's eye the hole that the Drevlians dug with their shadowy fingers in the meeting room floor. You cannot be the spirit of your people, I mutter through clenched teeth. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe that the spirit of an entire race could be so callously cruel. to trick a man into empathy, then using him and disposing him like a tool. I do not know what you are, but I will not grant you access to this outpost. Not tonight. I lift my head and shout out loud into the night, my voice carrying above the storm. Now, Alina. Now, fire the weapon. The so-called spirit of the Drevlian, with its attention fixed wholeheartedly on myself, rumbles with that ethereal thunder and shifts its gaze over the roof of the outpost, its silvery eyes shining in the darkness. Its movement, however, as all its movements are, is sluggish, slow, far, far too slow. And from the darkness, Alina, wrapped in robes of black to conceal her position, pulls back hard on two simultaneous handles attached to the colossal gun on the outpost's roof. An enormous mechanical crunch echoes out from the gears, and my teeth are set on edge with a sudden ringing. For a second or two it seems as if the very wind itself is sent out in the opposite direction, and the scrambling of each and every Drevlian is halted. As the monstrous weapon finally fires, a blast of heat is sent out in an intense circle of energy. I feel it against my skin, and my hair is whipped back from my head as a ring of light appears at the weapon's barrel, and a beam unlike anything I've seen so far explodes out like lightning, crackling and tearing through the night towards the mountains and the mist and directly through the heart of the great shadow. A twisted, crackling nervous system is briefly illuminated in white across the shadow's form, and it starts to leak out into the air as ink leaks out into water. A terrible scream is sent roaring through the mountains, and the entire horde of demons below bursts at once into clouds of shadow and bones as the enormous spirit collapses down and into itself, wounded and destabilized. Dust and steam is sent blasting out in all directions. Snow is disturbed and sent tumbling down the peaks. But we do not leave our stations. The Drevlian horde is displaced, and the giant spirit stays hidden away. But after a few hours of interlude, the attackers do return. They do not come as a tide, though. They do not flow like water. They come alone, or in small groups. Their fight and their power has been taken away, for this night at the least, and they are easy to deal with. Far, far easier. And we continue our battle until the rising of the sun, the outpost successfully defended, and kept from even a single breach. I turn to Adam as the sun rises. He is white with shock, eyes wide, his hands shaking. I clap him on the shoulder. The veins in my forearms all popped from the exertion. Good work tonight, man. Good work. Now come on, let's go. It's time to get some sleep. And away we go. My story is drawing to a close now. Just a little more to wrap up. I remained at the outpost for another couple of days. I did my duty, and I defended the place as best I could. The Drevlians did not return in any kind of number to equal the night that the tower fell, and I would wager that that could be thanks to our successful surprise attack on the spirit itself. If indeed a spirit he actually is, he will be more cautious in future. I remained at the outpost until Christian's replacement arrived, a woman from Missouri, and since my departure synced up with April's, as scheduled, the two of us headed out together. After saying our goodbyes, a hug from Charlie, a handshake from Adam Smith, a muttering nod from Yuri, and even a flicker of what might have been a half smile from Alina. A sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. I still struggle with the morality of my role in the outpost, of what I did between those mountains, whether I was in the right by fighting back against the Drevlian souls, or whether I should have just stood down and allowed them to return to what they craved so desperately. I still think about them. You know, of those cursed, forgotten people, trapped in their endless cycle of desperation, and the outpost guardians, likewise trapped in their own cycle of grim and gruesome defense. Constant, ceaseless stress, night after night, battle after battle on the mountainside. I wonder how far the spirit of the Drevlian would go to achieve his goal. I wonder how far Alina would go to maintain hers. Hell, do the horde of Drevlian souls even know what they're fighting for anymore? Do tonight's roster of the outpost soldiers, for that matter? It's been months since April and I departed together. Charlie will have left by now. Yuri too. Most likely. Not Alina, though. Not Alina. I suppose she's still there, doing her duty. I looked back one final time as we departed the outpost. April and I, clambering over the waist-high wall at the edge of the courtyard, and to my surprise, the first thing I noticed was the flags. Upon my arrival, only the Russian flag flew proudly. The others, the American, the British, the Norwegian, and the NATO. They were old and worn, ragged and weather-damaged. But I realized then at the moment of my exit that someone had replaced them. I don't know who. I don't know exactly when, but one of my comrades must have taken the time to replace them. Or even to fix them up, perhaps. The flags waved proudly in the breeze, bright shades of red, of white, and of blue, side by side, together. I mentioned this to April on the helicopter ride back to the Urals base, and she nodded. Yeah, I noticed that too, she said, but there was still something on her mind, I could tell. And I asked her to share it with me, Olga of Kiev. She said, thoughtfully, after a moment, I never got around to sharing this with you, but I read something interesting about her in that file. The one Yuri showed us. Do you remember? The night we confronted Alina. I found something very interesting indeed. Oh yeah, I replied. What was that then? She changed her name, you know, Olga. I mean, as she grew older, so the records say. Is that so? I asked her, cautiously. And what did she change it to? April looked up at me as the helicopter passed over the peaks. To Alina. I considered this in silence, but for the monotonous buzz of the blades, whirring round and around as the chopper carried us away through the sky. It's a common enough Russian name, I replied uneasily. Yeah, April said back, shifting in her seat. A common name. Still, I murmured. Still, she repeated, and we said nothing further for the rest of the flight. I saw her that night in my dreams. Alina. She stood atop the outpost, commanding its enormous rooftop weapon and pulling back on the handles. That powerful circle of light at the barrel giving way to the dazzling blast of the beam. To right the sins of the past, came her voice as a whisper on the wind. And her robes were blown about her as the snow was whipped up into a torrent. She looked to me, her eyes alive with glittering ice. And in that moment they were the same. Olga of Kiev and Alina of the outpost.